Five, four, three, two, one. Welcome back to the Fever Pitch Podcast. I'm your co-host Brian.
I'm Dan. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. We have a very special guest today, a basketball aficionado and enthusiast, Ian Penny. What's going on?
Okay.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you pulling up. A lot has happened in the sports world. March Madness, both of them have concluded. Honestly, I watched more of the women's games than the men's games this year. I don't know about you guys, but
The
that's how
women's
it was
games
for
are
me personally.
the women's games were bumped, especially this national championship over the weekend involving Iowa and USC, South Carolina to be exact. It was a good one for sure.
No, absolutely. Break it down for us. Talk to us about what happened in the women's tournament, the people's tournament.
So you know, initially when it comes to the scope of what women's college basketball, UConn was really like the standard for like dominance, and South Carolina it was like I don't want to say a distant second, but they were second, and the tides have since turned. South Carolina has been a very dominant program for about the last 2 or 3 years, and that dominance has not stopped, as you see in their 12-point victory against Iowa in the national championship. Dawn Staley is a very phenomenal coach. She was a former player in her own right, and she's carried. She's been leading a young group of women for the South Carolina basketball program for a long time. To dive into the weeds of the championship, it was a very balanced scoring effort from the what's the Gamecocks, and they were able to keep Caitlin Kirk contained for Iowa. She shot 10 for 28. She did get 30, but on 28 shots, that's something you can live with. And all in all, they ended up getting the 12-point victory.
One thing that stuck out to me in this game was it looked like Caitlin Clark just kind of ran out of gas. She started first quarter hot. And
Right.
I was like, is Iowa about to beat USC? Is this really about to happen? But then she ran out of gas. There's only so much you can do as one player.
Right.
Yes, others have done it before, but I think it's safe to say that Dawn Staley might be the best coach in all of collegiate sports right now.
All collegiate sports?
Yeah, hot take.
All right,
Crazy hot
salute.
take.
You disagree?
I would have
Um,
to go ahead, Ian. Go ahead, Ian.
nah, actually, that might be. I know I'm not gonna lie. UConn's coach, Dan Hurley is.
Dan Hurley.
I mean, I feel like really they're both they had similar schemes. I mean, like you said, Caitlin Clark is transcending the game every day, and she's one of the ones. But their team itself, like watching them play last year, like in person, watching them play this year, their role players are actually really good. Like Hannah Stokey is someone that's not talked about a lot. Gabby Marshall is a really good player, and then even some I think number 20 or someone on their team, like they all are in their own rights great players to the point where their averages are very, very above like the typical player, but because obviously you have Kalen Clark on your team, which has honestly been an issue with kind of the whole March Madness, with the whole media and only really talking about Kalen Clark, but their team was just that good. So I think Staley was good enough to understand like, okay, as long as we can keep those guys from going off, let Kalen Clark drop 40 on us. I don't really care. And I think that was a really good strategy. But I think also Hurley did the same thing, which we'll probably get into later with Edie, because they also have good role players who, if you let them go off, you're not going to win because you can't beat Edie.
Does
Yes.
this, does this indicate for the future that like for especially for collegiate basketball, is the structure really to go for a more overall balanced team than kind of have like a superstar field the team? We saw both teams with superstars in their own right that were getting a lot of attention in the media ultimately fall short.
You put the target on your back, and when the competition gets better, the target gets bigger. So ideally, you don't want to be in the position where it's like I got to get 50 against the best defense in the country. I can't pass to Joe Schmo. He don't like maybe if I need some like economics notes, he can help me. But if I need to get 25, I'm screwed. So it's like you kind of need to know your personnel And you can go into a game saying, yeah, if you have a bad night, we're gonna lose. And if that's the case, then your team is like really, really bad.
Yeah, I agree. I think like you look at Kentucky, right? Kentucky is one of those schools, even Duke, they get their 4 stars, their 5 stars, and they're like in quote super teams. And I think when you have, for instance, those 5 stars, in high school, they were those guys. They did everything. Like they were able to play the game the way they wanted to. But college is a different game. As we know, the skill gap is kind of like reduced, and even in a big thing starts to become like schemes, roles, and people have to understand that knowing your role is going to be the best thing in college. And it's going to be the best thing for you to even hopefully play pro. But if you put all these 5 stars, all these 4 stars who just all want to have the ball and be a star, like they can't really congeal well to where that's why I always never will bet on a Kentucky. I'll never bet on a Duke. And I honestly won't even bet on Arizona. But like you
Oh,
always see like your Gonzagas, you see your UConns, like these are the in Villanova when they had their runs, like these guys were they were getting good talent, but they were having really good role players. They had people who were going to buy into a system. I think college is a system, and most times it's not a system is when you're going for that one and done, or you're like a low major school where you're averaging like 50 points in high school and they let you average 30 points and you lead the NCAA in scoring because you go to a low major D1 program.
right. Well said. It's like when I think of like watching high school mix hits of like Jerome Quinterly, Marcus Levet, even Jonathan McGriff, it's like obviously you're the man in like in your city or in your or like in your town. But once you go to like Alabama or just a school where you got a whole bunch of dogs with you, you might not get off. And if you're so focused on getting off that you cause your team dubs and L's, these scouts see that. So you gotta know you gotta know how to be able to play your role. And even if you have the ability to get 30, you don't always have to. So that's another key point.
I think another big thing when I was like looking at this is overall it indicates like the strength of different collegiate conferences when it comes to the different sports. I
Yep.
would definitely say that I didn't realize it, but the ACC, I mean, I always knew they were really good at basketball, but I thought the Big Ten was very good at basketball too. But I'm realizing the Big Ten is more football than
Yes.
anything, and basketball and kind of every other sport in the Big Ten is I wouldn't say like secondary, but the big
They're
like
fake good. They're fake good. They're good for the Big Ten.
yeah. And it makes me think, do you guys think that Caitlin Clark would have got off like this if she was in like the ACC or the SEC?
Uh, Probably depending on where she went. It's like who else do you know that plays for Iowa? Talent travels. So if you're doing this here, you can probably do it elsewhere given the opportunity. And that probably factored into why she went there because you probably saw not the competition, but the potential of where she would be. It was like, okay, I can't just say 25 shots a game here. I can take 25 shots a game in Des Moines, Iowa. It's like there's not many people in Des Moines. I would just let this joint go.
Yeah, nah, for sure. I think like the whole fit thing is the biggest thing that is when you look at Killen Clark's like her game now that she's established, she can play the way she plays. But I think if you even look like the Steph Curry, for instance, when he went to Davidson, people just knew him as being like, the undersized son of Del Curry who couldn't even get walk-on spots. And they were like, oh, he can shoot. But once you start the way he could really transcend and play the game because they had a coach who believed in the system, I think Caitlin Clark, like she said, she wasn't recruited by UConn. So I think going to like these other schools, they may have pigeonholed her in a role that she could have not shown herself. And I think when she showed how good she was, they then found a system to build around. So they got like their other recruits that played roles and they allowed them to play in a system because her scoring affected their playmaking, which is why she also led the nation in assists. But I
Right.
think I think that's why like fit is such a big thing. And I don't think you're having Caitlin Clark do this at UConn because think about it, UConn like they have like obvious like they have like Paige, they had the hometown hero at one point, AZ Fudd, like they're getting all those like dogs and like Caden Samuels, like they have so many great players. But realistically, they all understand going to UConn. They're gonna just play that role. And I think Caitlin Clark, she could have done that per se, but I think like she maximized her potential best at Iowa.
No,
Absolutely.
well said, well said. And not to go on too much of a tangent, but this is the last question I have for you guys as it relates to this specific topic, especially when you guys are talking about like fit and things of that nature. Do you think like a lot of these players coming out of high school are thinking of how they're going to fit into these teams, or they're just kind of like, it's kind of like that shiny object syndrome? It's like, I recognize the Dukes, the UConns of the world, let me go there.
Depends on how good you are, in my opinion.
Mm.
Well, no, I'll take that back because I feel like Zion could have went anywhere. He would have went number one overall. So depending on the level of your talent and what you want to do, if you just want to make it to the league, you can go anywhere if you're talented enough. But if you're trying to build into a potential star, that kind of factors into where you're going, in my opinion. Especially when you have a grocery list of offers. It's like wherever you go, you're gonna be that guy. So it all depends on what your objective is.
Mm.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think like I said, I'll say it again, like fit is so important. Being a DMV like hoops guy, like I've seen so many like good players from our area go to schools and they're hitting the transport after a year. And I feel like that's always saying because like the fit. And I think one, to a degree, as we know, like recruiting is a business. So yes, coaches sell dreams, but I
Yep.
also think that the discernment on understanding that, just because you have a high major, just because you have a mid-major offer may not mean like you're good enough to really play. You're good enough to be on a team.
Right.
And
Right.
that's like a big thing because like you see so many players go from like these high major programs to either they jump to a JUCO just to show they still got it, or they'll go like low major and kind of use that as a JUCO in its own self. Like Keyshawn
Right.
Hall from George Mason started off at UNLV. He lost like 60 some pounds, went to George Mason year, played in the A10, played really good, and now he's jumping right back to get back to like the high majors. And I think like a lot of kids, and I mean you're young, like you're 17, you're 18, sometimes even 16, you're gonna think, oh, I want to go to a blue chip school. Coach Calipari is calling my name. Like, I have to go to the school. And I think that they don't always think long term because their city or like their I guess camp behind them is very much believers in them. And I think like that's good. But I think we also have to do a better job of like, being real and being, hey, this may not be a good fit for you. This may not this like you may want to look somewhere else. Like you have to think more long term.
Yeah, it's like we all got that one homie that was like really, 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 really good, but didn't go pro. And then we got that one homie that was really, really, really was like really good, that couldn't make a college team. It's like different tiers of like, and they're all buckets. Like I remember I was having a conversation with some friends at the gym one day. Like D3 hoopers are nice. They're like actually like very, very even the community college hoopers are nice. Now think about like a star D3 player and a D1 player on the bench, night and day.
Mm.
And even within that, there's like obviously you have all your everything in between, but like to be like I'm trying to think of like trying to think of somebody that was like really good in college and was really good as a pro. Jalen Brunson, to be like a Jalen Brunson, and yeah, that's not even a good example because he was a second rounder. But let's just go with Jalen Brunson and then like somebody like, oh no, Quinn Cook. Now I love Quinn Cook. He went undrafted. He was cooking in the at Duke. He went undrafted. So just seeing like the different spectrum of talent, especially in basketball, it's always crazy to just analyze that.
Yeah, it's wow. And I think like my last thing, like even like on a college like equivalent, like shout out my guy Marcus Dockery, like that's my guy. If you're listening, like love you, bro. But like, hey, he went to UMD, started off UMD, and he wasn't really getting that much bump. And I don't think that was really fully a lack of talent. That could be the fit. That could have been, the schemes, the system that he was in. But
Right.
he was good enough to get that offer. So he chose it. Hometown guy, he wanted to be here. And I don't think anyone like that's from the area would never want to play for like Maryland or for your hometown.
Right.
but it didn't work out. He jumps to Howard. He's killing it at Howard right now. You know, they just won back-to-back MEAC championships. He's been a big part of that starter. I think he was second or third in scoring, second team all MEAC or whatever. But like
Yeah. Getting busy.
he's
Sure.
getting busy there. And it's like, yeah, like he probably could play at some point in the Big Ten level, but he's not gonna have the impact where you go MEAC, where like it's one of the more smaller divisions in D1. But it just really shows like there's a lot of levels to this, and it's really a lot of fit because he's doing really good here at Howard, and I think that he's maximized the potential here. But I think like some people they'll end up going to these schools and they'll not maximize the potential, and then they fizzle out, and then they're like, oh damn, like who's bro? I then he used to hoop it here, and it's like, oh yeah, now he's not even hooping no more. Like they
Right.
just like the love is gone and all that.
Right.
Well said. Well said. It's a case of either what big fish, little pond, or little fish, big pond, I
There
guess.
you go. There you go. Right there.
Yeah. But talk to me about the men's March Madness. I'm not gonna lie, I watched more of the women's game than I watched the men's game. I turned the men's game on until about halftime, then I turned it off. I was like, all right, I need to go get some sleep. I'm not about to be watching this till like 1 a.m. You know.
I gotta commend UConn because initially they were like very guard focused, like guards and forward focused, and now they're moving to the bigs and they're still winning. So it's like obviously that's a testament to how good the coaching is, the personnel staff, and all the hands that play a role in that. But I just find that just very, 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 very commendable. And even before Dan Hurley, when they had Kevin Ollie, uh Jim Calhoun, they just always had like a very good program, and they're just showing themselves again. They were the favorite out the gate. I was like, they're probably going to repeat, and I was right. So,
I'll
and
give
I'm
you
like,
were right. You were right. You were saying it for since the beginning of the tournament. I tried to doubt it. You know, I really want to know one seed to make it to the final four, and here we got 2 1 seeds in the finals.
yep. I was like, this is likely going to. I think I picked Purdue or UConn.
Hmm.
I think I did, but regardless, Zach Edey, because even in the loss, you can still portray your talent. Zach Edey, he's going places. He's going places. I feel like even though he came on the losing side, he showed enough dominance throughout up until this point for 2+ years that he can definitely play in the league given the right situation. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing what the future holds.
Yeah, I think March Madness this year, I think like this was like a down year of men's. I think like let's like even looking towards the draft, like this is gonna be probably a weaker, it's like a very weak draft, but not where it's like I think I've been seeing a lot on Twitter, like, oh, it's gonna be the worst draft in like the 2000 since like 2000 or whatever, or like 202, 2013. Like all those drafts are kind of weak, but I think like this is a draft where it is definitely a down year. It's definitely the fact that there's no clear cut star, and I think that was kind of like college this year. UConn came in, like you said, like the favorites to repeat. They had everyone, even with losing Jordan Hawkins. They had Stephen Castle, who is personally like one of my like guys who I'm high on, assuming he declares. They had Spencer, Newton,
So yeah,
Finnegan, yeah, and like they had these two guys, Ross and I'm blanking on bro's name, but they're both from like Northern Virginia. And they were, I think, freshmen or sophomores too, who like they had a squad. And like I think like it was no and buts about it during the year. I was like, okay, these are gonna be like the team to beat. I watched them play Georgetown. Georgetown's not the greatest implication of a really talented team, but they had their players and they washed them. They washed Syracuse. Like they looked like they were gonna automatically go to the Final Four at least. I think Purdue, it was Zach E, like you said, like he's just that guy. Like he's having like a Luke Garza type of run. Like you can't really
and
stop him.
I was
Like
I see Luka Garcia in college, man. Oh my goodness.
bro, Luca Garza. Like I remember watching him in high school because we played them in the summer league, and I was like, yeah, nah, this guy is quite literally just Dirk. in
Yep.
high school. But
Yep.
like I think like I kind of like it's like rapid. It's like March Madness. Like there was so many teams that people were like, oh, like they're in the NCAA. Like I think it was like Iowa State. You had like your Utah State. People were surprised Tennessee was good they were. I think the problem was is that no one really watched a lot of basketball going into March Madness because college
Never
basketball was
do.
so kind of mid this year to the point where people were like, okay, like higher seed. I'm gonna assume it's gonna be upset. Like I thought, my original dark horse was James Madison. I thought they'd make a decent run. Obviously, they won, I think, their first game or two, but
Mhm.
I had them going and matching up with I think Duke, but I think that the teams that are usually number one, like Arizona and them, they always kind of fizzle out. And I don't know. I think that a lot of the teams were really not even fairly matched, but it was like once you got to a point where you're going to play like your powerhouses, kind of like how it used to be with women's, even where, every year you knew like these four teams were going to be in the final four. So it was easy to pick. This year, with the women's, you saw a little more like, okay, this team could upset them. But I think this year with the men's, like you said, like I had Purdue and UConn. I was like, I'm just waiting to see how it's going to unfold.
Right.
Well said. Um, one thing you guys did mention was Zach Edey.
Yep.
I've been hearing a lot that people say that he's not going to be a good NBA talent. What do you guys think about that?
I think he shows enough winning intangibles because they won a lot. And if you have enough winning intangibles, you can be molded into a great NBA player. Like there's a lot of players in the NBA that weren't that good coming in, and they were molded into good NBA players.
Like who?
Giannis is a great example.
People knew Giannis was going to be great. Can we be
At
serious?
what I did,
Bro,
but
even when he was a wee 68 overall in 2K17, I was like, this guy is 6'11 and he moves like a guard. I think if he bulks up, he's gonna be great. At least personally, that's what I was thinking.
okay, I'll take your word for it. But
Nah,
I'm sure there are quite a few individuals that are like, I'm not too high on Giannis. I think he's a project. I think he's just Don Maker. Okay, Don Maker.
I'll make
But,
her.
nah.
Is he even, is he even,
here,
is he
like
in that,
there's
is he in the
so
league
many,
still?
huh?
Is he in
Exactly. No.
oh, when I think of Thon Maker, I think of like Tony Snell, bro.
Relax.
Is
Nah,
that
that's
crazy?
that's so crazy.
Yes. Can you relax?
Nah,
They're one and the same to me.
Can you relax? Like, calm
bro,
down.
I'm wilding.
bro.
Yes.
Thon Maker was like a high school sensation. Like Tony Snell was just Tony Snell. Like
Bro, Tony
I,
Snell was a bucket in high school, guys. Can we be serious?
you
Don Maker
did
was
not you
10th
did not know who
overall.
Tony Snell was until
Don
Tony
Maker
Snell
was
was like
10th overall. He's a 5-star recruit.
Don Maker was. People were like, oh, that's the next
Literally.
KD Kevin Durant type of mix.
Where's this
Like
guy?
that's literally how he wasn't when he was at Orangeville Prep or whatever.
Yep.
And Brian, you're a liar. No one knew Giannis would be good. He was like, he wasn't even 6'11 at the time. He was like 6'8". He was this
6'8",
random guy from
6'8",
Greece,
skinny. Yep.
skinny. Like he was and yes, they did say he was gonna be a project, but like I'm not gonna lie, like at that time, I wasn't like the most into basketball, but I was a 2K kid to the point where like I knew hoops. I just didn't like watch a lot of basketball, but like I knew every player because I just would know all the rosters. And Giannis was like, he seemed to me like if you knew like Quincy Miller, like I was like, oh, you're gonna be another Quincy Miller, a tall, like forward with like guard with a potential, but I didn't know I was gonna pan out. But every year he got better. And I think like that in itself proved that, I think he had the intangibles and potential, but he was a workaholic. I think when you look at Edey, if you look where he was in high school, he was a typical super like 7 foot plus tall high schooler who could barely move, barely shuffle his feet, and could like
Right.
just dunk a ball. But every year in college, he got better. He was a 3-star coming out. Like every year he got better. And I think if he had left last year, he'd probably be in the G League right now or like on some team's bench or two-way. But I think this
Right.
year, like timing wise, is not being a strong of a draft. And two, like he's shown like, hey, I can do this. I think Luka Garza, for instance, he was the National Player of the Year. He was the best player in college like 2 years straight, and he finally just got his contract. But I think that was more because like he's getting glue guards like 6'10", a little more slower. But Edie's 7'4". You have like at the end of the day, you can't teach size, but like he's shown that he's not that slow. He's got like if you watch the games, he's getting up and down the floor. He can be like a Zubac for like the Clippers. If Zubac has a place in the league, I think he got a place in the league. If if like Jackson Hayes, who yes, he can rim run and jump out the gym, but like there's still like a lot of inefficient parts of his game. He can be in the league. Hartenstein, like Isaiah Hartenstein.
There's 40 teams in the NBA and at least 2 to 3 centers on each team. I think he could be one of the 60 to 75 centers in the NBA.
Definitely. He
For a
definitely
career
has a
or
spot.
for a career or for a few years before he goes to
For
China?
a career, he can stick around.
That's the question I'm asking.
I think
You guys think he's going to be a star center, or do you guys just think he's going to be a role player and he might get bounced to China or Puerto Rico?
I think he'll have a career like Brook Lopez. If he
Whoa, that's a
actually no Brook Lopez. If Brook Lopez came
Brook
in the league,
Lopez is nice.
Bro, Brook
came in the
Lopez
league with
is
no
the most.
jumper.
He has the franchise record for nets. That's a high. It is a high stake you're kind of putting on him.
I mean, he got there over time. Okay,
But
Lopez.
your player comp for Zach Edey is Brook Lopez.
I said I think he can has the potential to become one like Brook Lopez.
Brook Lopez has been in the league since 2008. He's been here for 15 years.
Okay, I said he can.
Nah, maybe. Let me stop hating. Maybe
Right, he can.
Maybe.
That's what I'm saying. Like
I just think when I think of Zach Edey, I think of like a Zaza Pachulia, respectfully.
That's hate. You see,
That's crazy.
Did Zaza Pachulia get drafted?
Zaza Pachulia has a ring.
I mean, but did he get drafted though? I mean, Zaza Pachulia
Second round, mid-second round.
Yeah, I mean, like let's be real. Like Zach Edey is definitely a top 15 pick. I don't care if it's a weaker draft. I think the fact he's 7'4", he moves solidly, and
I gotta look up a draft. Now I gotta look
at this point, you have to ask yourself like, if he's like, as long as your player is like a competent, like he sets good ball screens, he plays with his size very well. Like there's some team that's gonna be like, you know what, we're gonna get this 7'4" kid that he spent X amount of years in college, but he's young, and we need like. The way I've started looking at some of the teams in the NBA, like you have your stretch, you have an athletic rim runner, and you have like this an enforcing type of big. You got Walker Kessler out of Auburn at Jazz. I think he's going to develop into a really good center. Zubac himself is like 6'11", 7 foot. He himself is not like he's a great role player. He rebounds the ball well. He sets good screens, and he takes up enough space and presence where he's a solid playmaker out the post. And I think Edie's going to be a great playmaker off the post, because even with the role players he's had on his team, or not the role players, the people he had on his team, he was getting them the ball. He was allowing them to like shine. He wasn't like a black hole. He got him the ball and like he didn't know what to do with it. And I think if you put him on a team that has like those guards that are going to have the best two-man game and even just shooters, that's where he shines at. So it's gonna come down to who drafts him. Now, if they're drafting him just because like he's the best available, or they need a center, but they don't need a center like Edey, that's where they'll fail. But there's definitely players like if Rudy Gobert can have the success he has, like Walker Kessler, Gobert, Zubac, like all people he can be.
Rudy, whoa, hold on. You think that Zach Edey can beat Rudy Gobert?
No. If you're 7'4", 7'5", playing defense is a little easier now.
Like Rudy Gobert is I can't, as much as I think everyone hates, and I feel like I myself can attest to like where it's like, okay, Rudy Gobert sucks offensively, can't hit a free throw, whatever, but like you can't take away the presence and the activity he brings. And I think on defense. And I think like at the end of the day, that's what Edey will be able to do, something of the sorts. Like if you go through every starting center in the NBA, like he's probably put him in the league right now. He's bottom 3. Like but if he's a backup, where he's probably going to be, that's a great place to start. And I think that you're seeing the center like position change again in the league right now. And because the way games are a little more faster paced, people are starting to implement guard development into their big men. He has good IQ. And I think that with certain teams, he can definitely shake up off the bench and even eventually become a solid starter. I don't think he's ever going to be a star. I'll make that take. And if he does, if he ever is listening to this pod, I'll gladly make an apology. But he's definitely someone I think can have a good NBA career.
The names I've seen connected to Zach Edey, Boban Marjanovic, Al Jefferson, and Brook Lopez.
Brook Lopez,
Like like these are all very, very much possible. And I said Brook Lopez off my own film study. And I did, sometimes I just gotta validate myself. And I did. So it's very possible. Also, development helps.
I just want us to also acknowledge that he's getting these player comps because these players are tall, but let's be serious.
That's how they
7 foot is the new like 6'8" in the NBA.
Huh?
What?
It is.
What do you...
For these big men, 7 foot is like the new like average height.
No,
the height has been trending upwards. You just got Victor Wembanyama. How tall is he? 7'6"?
He's like 7'3", 7'4", but that's a generational talent. Don't talk about
the outlier. This is what he does. This is what he does. It's like, oh, KD has 60. He's KD. Like, it's not like
I mean, KD started the trend, bro.
Nah.
Even Tyler Smith is 6'11".
Counting who Tyler Smith is.
Bro, you're naming guys who are like they'll be 6'10", 6'11", and 7 foot, and they'll be mad lanky. Zach Edey is a legit body. Like Domantas Sabonis is starting for the Centers. He's like 6'10", 6'11". He's a solid built guy, but like he himself is not like the hugest guy ever, which is why in certain games he ends up getting exposed. Kevon Looney's like 6'9". He's a start. He's not even starting center no more for the Warriors, but he's a center. Draymond Green is obviously a point center. With the Rockets, Jabari Smith is like 6'10", 6'11", but he's not a center. He's a 4. And he's not, and I wouldn't even
these athletic 4s play 5.
Yeah, like positionless basketball is a thing now. And and position basketball when it first happened was getting cooked because like, your DeAndre Jordans and things like that had no clue, like, well, I'm only a rim runner, I only dunk, my Andre Drummond's. But now, because in college, even big men are having to set up off. Look at DJ Burns. Obviously, DJ Burns is a very like Zach Randolph type of guy, but if you look at the way that they play, they operate through him. Nikola Jokic, obviously he's one of the best players in the league, like generational talent itself, but they operate through him. Zach Edey, they operate their offense through him. They don't necessarily look them to score, so that obviously at some point it's like, okay, you're in college, like his prowess is there, but he's learned like playmaking skills where I would say are even better than the Timberwolves starting center Gobert. Like, again, I'm not hating on Gobert. I'm just saying that like that playmaking aspect is where like the center and him being 7'4", and even if he's a little slower, will be a threat.
Yes. We're moving away from the paint. And Zach Edey can move away from the paint and facilitate to us enough where he can be of use.
Okay. I just want us to not act like it's a new thing of centers moving away from the paint. This has been happening for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I said we are doing it. This is what we're doing.
I bet. Funny enough, on the mock, they have him going to Toronto, so he'd be back in his home country.
That'd be great for him.
To develop. Toronto's a new OKC. You go there to get good. You have nothing to lose if you go there.
Yeah, that would be an interesting pick if they went there. It'd be nice of him to go back there. I felt bad he didn't get no NIL money. That's sick.
Right.
I think that kind of made him like the people's champions in a sense. It's like, dang, you're not even getting paid. You're just out here like a regular NCAA athlete, like pre-COVID. It's crazy.
Just buckets and syrup. That's it.
Just buckets and under the table money instead. It's like, no. But
We're
Let's
not
talk
making any
about.
allegations.
I'm not making any allegations, but let's talk about a player who has a bit of an uncertain future. Let's talk about Bronney James. Why do you guys think he's declaring for the draft, maintaining his eligibility, and entering the transfer portal all at the same time? I didn't even know you could do that. I'm not even gonna lie. I thought you had to pick something.
Well, you can declare and undeclare, so that's not new to me. I just think he's just examining examining what the future holds. I am the son of a top 5 basketball player ever. What can coach, all respect, I don't know who the coach of USC is. What can coach so and so tell me that my dad hasn't already told me or can't tell me now? And now the G League Ignite is coached, so that doesn't exist anymore. And my dad doesn't have that many years ahead of him. He says he's retiring after 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's just get what needs to get done. I'm going to develop regardless. And I can get drafted off my name alone, to be honest. So it's like there's nothing to really lose here.
But like, as a man, why would you want to just get drafted off of your name alone? Like, you for him, it's like, don't you want to get drafted because you're a good basketball player and you want to have like a substantial career, or do you always just want to be in your father's shadow?
Brother, this is real life.
I think he's a freshman in college, so he he hasn't even reached the fullness of his potential yet. So wherever he goes, he will still have an avenue to do so.
I completely agree. I just think he should do that in college or the G League. Why just jump straight into the NBA where maybe you'll hang around because you're LeBron's son, but after LeBron retires, if you didn't take those necessary years to develop, you're essentially going to be sitting there with dust in your pockets. I mean, yeah, your father can probably finance your lifestyle for the rest of your life. Cool.
Oh, you think if he enters the league now, he'll be gone in 60 seconds?
Yes, I do not think that Bronney is ready to be an NBA player as he is right this second.
Let's look at some players on some rosters right now.
Nah, I'm not gonna lie. I agree with Brian. I don't think he's an NBA player right now. I think, like you said though, Dan, like a lot of times recently, because you can now declare without signing it with an agent or agency,
Right,
you can
right.
hit the transfer portal. Like you do all through the same time. And I think like he needs to. I think he's smart from. He can check the waters. He can see like, yo, like what are people taking me? Like, I think if he's the first round pick, he stays because you get like a guaranteed deal where you
Right.
have like your first 2-3 years to develop. If he's looking at the second round, I think he goes back because he's like, okay, I'm not even guaranteed a contract. Like I could really be up out of here. And like even sometimes the late first rounders, they get like those multi-year deals where really just like really, really condensed deals with like 2 team options. And I think he sees that as just to see where he's at. And then 2, like you said, LeBron only has like 2 more years left. That's what Shams said. And I think like if you want to like try to make that a thing, you do it now. Especially again, draft is not. And I've said this probably 3 times, but this is a really weak draft. So some like you look at from the aspect that people say that LeBron wants to play for Son with whatever the Lakers are going to end up doing this year in the playoffs. Like it leaves up to him. Like okay, maybe he leaves and goes to whoever drafts because he wants to play for Son. And at that point, he doesn't care. And they know like okay, I can get LeBron here, and we can sign him to some deal just so he can play for Son, and that may make us better. Like there's a lot of different ways you can look at
Like
how
it's a
that can go.
there's financial aspects, there's business aspects. It's a lot to be attached to it. And also, you don't want to be the franchise that gave up on LeBron James' son. That's nuts. So you already have some level of insulation at large because it's like, yeah, we're going to, yeah. So it's like, I think the expectation is that he's going to come out the gate being like Markel Fultz, barring injury. But no, he doesn't have to be. He just has to show the ability to play. And he's shown that already.
what player was it that they did the thing? They got him in the first round and then they sent him straight to the G League and then they just brought him back like 2 years later.
I'm sure they've done that to a
I'm
few.
gonna say they don't have so many players. Like James
Yeah.
Bouknight was in the G League for a minute and now he's waived. Jarris Walker spent almost his whole season this year with the Mad Ants, and he was the 8th or 9th pick in the draft last year. The other player out of that the Jazz picked, his name is blanking me. He spent pretty much his whole season with
Deontay George, right?
was it? No, not Keontae George. They had another pick, and he went to. I think he came out of UCF.
Hold on, I think I know who you're talking. I think I know who you're talking. Jazz. Was it Abaji from UConn? Was it O'Shea? O'Shea
Nah,
Abaji?
nah, he was out. No, he came out of Kansas. They had this one
Kansas,
guy,
Kansas.
and I'm forgetting his name, but was it like it might be like Taylor or something? It begins with a T. I believe he was the 10th pick, or whatever. But he spent his whole year in the G League. Like it's more common that you're seeing that, especially like Kevin Porter. Obviously, some things happen, but he started off in G League. Jordan Poole started off in G League. I think like the teams that are more contenders, they'll send like their picks to the G League just to get some reps in. Even Amin Thompson, he spent a lot of time in the G League this year before he started playing. I think it's a very common thing now, just because they are coming out a lot earlier, and some of these players are just not ready, and they're coming off a lot of potential, but they're either gonna not play on the teams they're at, or they just need the reps. So it's like, okay, send to the G League, they're gonna get pretty close to it, and then they build that confidence. So,
Well said.
Well said, definitely.
Oh, Grayson Allen. He was a junior for a little bit.
Is Grayson Allen still in the league?
Yes.
with the Suns, he's might be 50, 40, 90 this year.
Oh, my fault. But let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk about John Calipari. Talk to me, Dan.
He's agreed to terms with the Arkansas Razorbacks. I'm sure it's going to be very lucrative. I'm not familiar with the deal's terms, but I'm sure it was a favorable contract. He's leaving Kentucky, where he's had a lot of talent and not the amount of success you would think you would have with so much talent. But hey, he's a very experienced coach, and he's on to a new chapter in his life.
Why do you think he's leaving Kentucky in this manner?
Because he sees that the SEC is trash at basketball, and he's not getting any younger.
So do you think this is a good move for him?
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't be.
Arkansas. Is Arkansas like a big basketball market?
It's in the middle. It's not the biggest, it's not the smallest, but they've had some success in the years past. But yeah, he's won the title before. He's been in the Final Four for like he's breeding NBA talent. So it's like wherever he goes, he's spoken for. And even before Kentucky, he was coaching Derrick Rose in Memphis. So he has success.
Arkansas, they've been solid the last few years. They're not like they've been pretty solid. They've had players like I think they had like a year like Chris Likes-in, a few of them, and they went pretty.
They had Chris Likes.
They had Chris Likes in them, and they had a few good players where like they were competitive. And I think that, like you said, his success the last few years have been very, very underwhelming. And I think that the Heat has started to, get to him and honestly expose Kentucky. Like again, you're recruiting all these players, a lot of them, especially in the last few years, like ever since I want to say like re-graduated high school, like they have not been panning out. And to the point where like they're bottoming out so early. You can tell like even if they somehow get the bid to NCAA, it's off the strength of the name. Like they're just not good. And I think that because so many other schools are now like getting these players that are having really successful careers in the NBA that are not always known as the blue chips, it was time for him to make that move and start somewhere else. See if he could kind of like make his name a little better, kind of like a Jawan Hout where he came in with the Michigan and like he made his name really good. And like you said, he started off at Memphis. He went to Kentucky, he built that there. And I think that if anything, the longer he stayed there, the more he tarnished his legacy. At this point, like leave while you still have it. I think like he just needs to start new, and I think that would give him the opportunity because, like you said, like he had a lifetime contract. Like he said, he pretty much every year would go in and they would just re-sign him, but
Yep.
they must have given him a crazy offer. So new place, new opportunities, and
Yeah.
Now, the real question is, do you think the struggles of Kentucky have been more on Coach Cal or more on Kentucky as a program?
Look at all the time he's put. So it's like obviously he knows how to develop youth. Now that youth can reach their fullness of their potential, that's on them. But if I got you this far, I gotta push you all the way up here. I'd rather just leave.
yeah. Uh, I think it's honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I think when I think of John Calipari, I think of the Mark Cuban of coaches. Amazing businessman. He sells dreams. He gets people. He's never not gonna have a good recruiting class because he's just that guy. Like if this was like I don't know like Shark Tank or some shit, like he's like John Calipari is one of them guys. Like he can go like anytime he pulls up to somewhere, he can make people decommit and commit to him. And I think that's what he does well. I don't think he does a good job of I think the broader picture is now you have all these players, like we talked about earlier, like fits and roles. He's not getting guys who know basketball. And I think like he made that comment a few times where like these guys don't know basketball, like they don't know this. Like all I know is once a coach starts berating his own teammates, I mean not teammates, his players, you know it's pretty bad. And I think like you're getting so many young guys from so many places with so many different like personalities. Like he didn't do a good job at having, I guess like it almost seemed like you're basically having an AAU team of college. They're all this like that's an issue. Again, you can't take an AAU team, you can't take team takeover to even like George Mason. George Mason is blowing him out the water. Like so I think when he goes to Arkansas this time, he needs to look at transfer portal. He needs to look at 2-3 year players who are gonna help build a culture. I think he needs to build a culture back. I think that Kentucky culture was lost. I think at a time where he had like his Rondo, DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, all of them, like that was like you're just getting the top guys and they're just gonna beat you. But because the skill gap and the athletic gap has changed, and there's so much talent out here now that are going to all these schools, he needs to actually have a college program like a UConn, like how Bill Nova had in their runs. It's not as simple as if I can get all the best high schoolers, I'm Gucci.
Right. I'm not gonna hold you. His tournament resume is a little shaky now. He only got one of the chips now. I don't know. I think he's just trying to figure it out somewhere else.
Yeah, man. Rondo, and that's his guy. Rondo was guy. Rondo was on the pod, on his own pod recently. He was kind of like, let's be real, DeMarcus. He was like, let's be real, cousins. Like he got one like in the last X amount of years. Like he's been getting bounced. Like his resume like is more on who he sends to the league versus his success in like the seasons. And I think when you now talk about legacy and you talk about like who's really like a great coach, you just can't be like, oh well, he sends people to the league. And now have to ask, well, like what's his like success rate in college doing? And it's like, nah.
It's a little, it's a little questionable now.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, well, I think these last few years they've gotten bounced out by did they get bounced out by Oakland this year?
Let me see.
Yeah, I
I
think
bounced on the first round 2 of the last 3 years. I mean, see back.
They've been losing to like no-name teams essentially.
Yeah.
So it's like at that point when you're losing to teams that respectfully don't have the same funding as Kentucky, don't have the same type, at least they shouldn't have the same program or the same quality of things. What does it really say about him as a coach? You essentially have every tool but it seems that you're not able to put it together. It's like you got all the Lego pieces, but he's the instructions and they're upside down.
That's one way to look at it. I would say more so at the end of the day, and this could be an indictment on him. It's like, are these players motivated enough after you get your SEC success? Once you get to the tournament where you're playing all these different schools, are you motivated enough to tap into that third gear? And sometimes the answer is no, unfortunately.
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, Dan, like you were saying earlier, D3 Hooper is nice. So that means any D1 Hooper is nice, which means like it's gonna come down to, do you love basketball? Do you want to win? Do you want to like be like a team versus like, do I want to raise my draft stock? Am I here because like I'm trying to go to the league? And like Oakland, like those guys are a lot of those guys are gonna graduate and they're gonna go work jobs or they're gonna work like somewhere that's not on the court. They can work in basketball, but they're not gonna be playing basketball. So
Right.
these guys are like, they're here to win. They really like they're here to be a team. And I think that when he goes to Kentucky, I think the selling point is like we can make you into an NBA player. So they think like the instant means I go to Kentucky for a year to develop myself or to showcase myself to be this. They don't really care about the aspect of winning. So because of that, they don't have like a real, I guess, system where it's like, okay, at the end of the day, like I'm a take some less shots just so my man can take some shots and we win. They're like, nah, like I still gotta get mine, or like I'm gonna play away because I'm only want to be here for a year. Like you've seen the last few years, like Justin Edwards was the number one player or like top two players in high school last year. He declared for the draft this year. He had an awful year, but he's like, his instant means was I'm going to Kentucky to go to the league, and end of the year he's like, I'm still gonna go because these kids aren't like they aren't buying in, and I think that that's like a biggest issue. These teams that have been knocking them out, these underdogs, like they've bought into whatever it is. They just want to maximize to be the best player for the team, not the best player for their own selfish reason. I think that's an ego thing that he didn't do a good job of. I guess at his time at Kentucky with these recruits.
All right.
Now, do you guys think that Bronney should go to Arkansas now that Coach Cal is there?
No.
I mean, I guess. I mean, I don't see the need for that. I think he should. He's going to probably go to a school on the West Coast and likely a mid-major and just build off that. Honestly, I only think he's just gonna enter the draft and go second round. And wherever he goes, his sons and LeBron's gonna go there immediately.
West Coast universities aren't good at basketball, though.
Yeah, but I'm the son of a goat.
Yeah.
I guess.
I have a crazy take that he should do. Y'all know like his boy Drew that he just got the job at Duquesne.
Yes.
I think that might be okay. Like when I was in school, I was getting recruited for track. Duquesne was one of the schools that sent me a few letters. No hate to Duquesne, it's in the middle of fucking nowhere. It's not the place to be. That's fine. But like I think that would be a really good look. That's one of LeBron's best friends. You don't think he's gonna look out for Bron? You don't think he's gonna put him in situations to develop and to really play his game? And no matter how good or bad, and to be fair, Duquesne was a pretty solid A10 team this year. I think like that's a mid-major at this point. I think like that would be a good spot for him. You're gonna have someone that's gonna take care of him, gonna let him play through his mistakes, and they're gonna do the best to, I guess, develop in the way. I think might be a good route for him. I don't think going to another high major is there because I think at this point Bronney he just needs to maximize what he's gonna be. He's 6'2", 6'3". I'll say he's like 6'3", maybe 6'4". He's more of like a 3-and-D guy. I don't think he's a star. I don't think he's a point guard. I don't think he's a shooting guard. But I think if you go to a school such as Duquesne and you rock out, even if your numbers don't equate to what you like a high major, that's enough to where an NBA team's gonna be like, nope, we're taking him. We're just gonna take him.
It's key to not be a box score adventure because you look at these box scores, it's like, oh, he's not good. But if you look at the tape, he's diving for loose balls. He's picking up 94 feet. He's getting rebounds. He's facilitating. That translates. It's the tangibles that really translate and carry you very far in this sport called basketball.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Um, who do you guys think should be the next coach of Kentucky?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. Do they have any? Do they have any candidates?
I feel like there's a few obvious calls they gotta make. You gotta call Dawn Staley. You got to. She's gonna say no, but you gotta call it. It's a respect thing.
I mean, yeah, if it's just calling just a call, you can call a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm gonna call Greg Popovich, bro.
Yeah,
Come on, gang.
you just calling just a call. I'm trying to figure out who would say yes.
I think they said Billy Donovan from the Bulls. Like, I think he should make that move back to college.
Yeah,
I think
Nick Pitino, Nate Oates, like
mhm.
get an established college guy and go from there.
I wouldn't even be mad. Like, I'm one of Rondo's biggest fans, bro. I think Rondo would be an amazing coach. I know he said he has interest in coaching, and I know he did say he wanted to wait to step into coaching after his like kids graduate. But I think they got to make that call. I think at that point, Kentucky's going to go through a rebuilding culture. Yes, he would have been someone who's never had a coaching job prior, but LeBron stamped him. He said one of the few minds I can really be like, he's like one of those guys is Rondo. If one of the best players of all time, arguably the best, is going to say that, you deserve a coaching job. I think Rondo going in there young and kind of redoing their program would be something they need. I think that's like a whole like clearing slate because he may bring in his own right, he may bring some past players from Kentucky to be on the staff, where you might have like a pretty dominant like ex NBA, ex like Kentucky like player staff, and in that own right, like that might be a really good like refreshing thing. Like you're seeing like your Calipari's, and even like before Coach K retired, like they're more like older coaches. I think like seeing young coaches, like got a shout out like Tavon Sattler from Nicholls State. He was like a assistant coach at University of Maryland. He's not even 30, and he almost took his team to March Madness this year. They almost beat Maryland. I think like that age and that tenure doesn't matter. I think going young would be a really good look. And obviously Rondo's not like the youngest guy anymore, but like he would be like a very younger coach.
Well said.
I think they might call Jim Boheim potentially.
Yeah, from Syracuse. He's old.
John Shire.
John Shire from Duke.
Yeah,
he's not even Duke.
I think you make that call. Got to.
What is he gonna leave Duke for?
Potentially,
No, tell it's like he went there. What am I gonna leave for?
You got to throw him the bag, obviously. You got to.
Sorry, no. Don't think so.
Did you guys already say Brad Stevens?
Bro, why would Brad Stevens, who is a general manager or like the the president of like basketball operations of one of the more thriving franchises right now, be like, nah, I'm about to go curse college again. Like, no, like, nah, that's an egregious take. I think Billy O'Donovan of the Bulls is probably someone I could see again making that jump from NBA to back to college.
I forgot that man existed. For like, I promise you, I forgot he existed.
But Brad Stevens is crazy.
Oh my goodness! I just love him in the front office not being seen.
Hey, I just googled it. They're even talking about it now. Fans wondering if Brad Stevens could replace Coach Cal in Kentucky.
Oh, ew.
They would have to pay, like they would have to pay him the craziest bag ever.
Oh, basketball coaches get paid.
Oh, they do, but like you're Brad Stevens. You're like the guy who built like the Celtics to what they are now. You've done all that work. Imagine you just leave, and it's kind of like nah. Like I feel like at that point, like Brad Stevens, like I've built up what Celtics are now. Like I'm staying here.
Yeah, just stay here, stop coaching, be quiet. You're doing a great job. I just don't need you coaching.
He literally coached Brian just to get to the front office. He didn't want to stay in the coach that wrong. He was like, "Oh, y'all want me to be your GM? Wonderful. I'm not even trying to coach no more either." Like, you think he wants to
you want me to just oversee? I was like,
bro, he oversees. He got one of the best jobs ever. Don't get me wrong. They do like being like a president of like basketball operations or general manager is a great job and it's not easy, but like you don't have to manage player personalities, do all this like house calls and home visits and everything that he'd have to do. He'd have to go back doing all that stuff. He is probably super comfortable in racist Boston.
Yep. You want him to go back and coach college kids?
In Kentucky.
Man, listen.
I'm just saying, maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if I see some headlines. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about some NFL headlines. Rumors are that CeeDee Lamb might be potentially holding out for a contract. They're saying that he's not going to attend OTAs. What do you think of that, Dan?
He's due, but I mean, all players do this. If like once that rookie deal on you, once you got 1 or 2 years left on your rookie deal, start pouting. And he has 1 year left on his rookie deal, so he's pouting. Pay the man. Simple. Give the man his bread.
They have to pay him. He just put up a crazy. What did he put up? He put up, I think, he had the most receiving yards or second most.
Pretty sure. I'm about to get the numbers in a second. But yeah, just give people their money. You know, it's not hard.
I completely agree with you. And CeeDee Lamb, if the Dallas Cowboys do not pay CeeDee Lamb, I think we'll actually start to see Dallas fans start to leave. I mean, they haven't won in 30 years, but I think this would be the first, like, all right, I'm out of here type of thing.
He had the best year of his career. So he's getting better with age. So you pay now, because if you don't pay now,
pay more later.
Mm-hmm.
You would think they learned their lesson about that, but hey. But in free agency, Kyle Duggar signs a 4-year deal, $58 million with the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, he's familiar with that team. He's familiar with the Gerard Mayo. So like, yeah. I know. Ain't no, it's like, yeah, especially with the Patriots, they keep their own a lot. So this isn't a surprise to me.
Do you think he's worth that?
What is that? That's 15 million a year. I mean, what's the market for DBs? I think that's fine. 14.5 million a year. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine.
That's valid. That's valid.
Not like Buda Baker or Kyle Hamilton, but like he's like not bad. He's like a tier 3 safety.
Tier 3? I think it's at least tier 2.
Okay, see, even better.
Yeah, that's fair. But let's change the temperature a little bit. We're doing it a little different today, right? We're gonna have Ian provide the hot takes. All right, what you got?
Okay, so I guess my first hot take is I believe Jordan Poole is the future point guard for Washington Wizards. Yes, he didn't have a good like first half or more this season, but when you take into consideration that Wes Unseld, who's no longer coach, played Jordan Poole out of position, and Wes Unseld also was very had interesting time. I won't berate him, but I think like it was coach malpractice. I'm not gonna lie, and I think that had a lot to do with the unsuccessful things we saw out of Jordan Poole. But as a diehard Wizards fan, I've watched every game, pretty much almost every game, and as much as it's pained me, you've seen it. You've seen the fact that Jordan Poole is developing into the guy he was at Warriors and more. His playmaking's been really good. He had his first I think 20 and 10 game of his career. He's been averaging I think 8 assists and about 20 points the last few games, and few as in close to 10 versus 3. I think between the last 5-8 games he's been playing really well, and I think that he continues to develop. That's the way the league is pushing. We're not really seeing these floor generals like Chris Paul and stuff no more. They have to be very dynamic in their scoring and their ability to play make, and I think that he will be the Wizards point guard of the future. And I'm a believer. No one can ever make me hate Jordan Poole.
I'm not comfortable with Jordan Poole being one of my vets. Like my vets are Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, and Landry Shamet. That doesn't make me comfortable.
What about him doesn't make you come? I think the media put him in such a bad light. But when you when you read the athletic articles by David, I think David Aldridge did a piece on him, and then Josh Robbins another athletic writer, did some pieces on him. He's a very and even like the post game, like the media always needs someone to talk bad about. And I think Jordan Poole made that very easy for them at the beginning of the season.
Yes.
But like he's always held like and like taken any of the stuff that's happened with a lot of grace in a very mature way. Even back with the Warriors with the whole Draymond and him situation, he never crashed out or do anything to the point where you're like, okay, like he's a problem. Yes, people got him at the beginning of the preseason when I think Wes Unseld made something and he was like side eyeing like the camera and the cameras got him. I think that it's a slight mature thing, but some people are very animated, and I think like that's one of the things where like dang, like it sucks when I gets put on camera, but you have to remember they're always filming. But he when Bilal Coulibaly got drafted, he was like, I want him to be next to me during the lock. I think he had them come out to the Bay Area and just hang out when he first got traded, just because he wanted to get acclimated and meet the players. And I think he's a very good guy, and I think like he said, like he was happy to come to DC. Like he said, his sister goes to GW apparently. Like he's like, I always enjoyed playing in Washington. I think like it's refreshing to have a player who wants to be in DC. In the past, we've had people who want to out. We've had people in the past that got traded here and they're like, I want to get out of here as fast as possible. But I think his attitude has always been there, and it's like the end of the season, but he's showing a lot of potential going into next season. I think that he's still young. And I think because of that, like he hadn't even reached his prime yet. He's just a younger player. It's a lot that I think that his upside is still there, even though he's shown a lot of lowlights this year.
That I will agree with. I will agree with that. I just think he needs to be contained, and we don't have anyone to contain him yet. So I'm scared.
Shade is crazy.
Respectfully.
Oh, we're paying him a lot of money.
Yes. See what I'm saying?
Oh,
the Wizards are, but you have to keep in mind where the Wizards are finally going in a rebuild. We don't like we have players who we have so much money. Realistically, no one's gonna come here. We don't want anyone to come here. We're not gonna be good. We're paying them like we have one of the highest cap spaces in the league right now. So like pay him that money. For him, we got second round picks, we got a first round pick, and yes, it's highly protected, but we got rid of elderly Chris Paul.
Yes.
Like I think like that's like we have a young asset. I would really pray, like I truly pray that the Wizards decide to make him like a player in the future. But regardless, you have a guy who has a chance to develop and move for assets. I don't want that. I think a lot of people don't want that, but that could possibly happen. But regardless, like at the end of the day, you're in the terms of rebuild, he's doing nothing wrong. We're paying a lot of money, but like we got to get the money out somewhere, and we have some money. If we were trying to sign some people over the offseason to contend, it was like, okay, we're paying him. That's not a good look, but we have so much money, it doesn't really matter. And we're gonna pay Chris Paul the same amount, like a lot of money, just to do nothing.
Yeah, you make it. Listen, if we can pay Davis Bertans, we can pay Jordan Poole. Like,
bro, we've paid so many, bro. We've paid so many people. Like, Jordan Poole can get paid because, like, we're not respectfully like Bertans was a specialist who, as soon as we paid him, forgot how to shoot. So like
that's what they all do. Bertans, Webster. To this day, I never would have seen Marcel Webster in person. Ever. I just don't. We don't even in the same place.
Bro,
I've seen so many bricks.
Martell Webster, bro. What he was a singular. He was like a top 10 pick out of high school. He's supposed to be nice, bro. My goodness.
I was like, oh, we got a steal. Brick City.
I mean, one thing I definitely will say is we definitely do have the space and room for a rebuild, especially when the core is what Kyle Kuzma, Marvin Bagley, and
Bilal and Denny.
It's like they're building with Kuzma, Avdia, Coulibaly, Kuzma, and this new guy who I admittedly wasn't a big pick on him. His name was Tristan Vucevic. He came over in the season. He's been rocking out. When I saw him in the summer league, I wasn't a big fan, but he's been doing really good things so far with the team in limited play. But I think if you look at the team, we got younger. We have a lot of projects. Like Denny's breaking out this year. He still has a lot more potential to go. He's younger than all of us. Bilal Coulibaly just turned 19. Again, Jordan Poole is 24, 25. I think if he's 25, he just turned 25. Like he's
24 now.
Who is?
You said Jordan Poole. He's 24 right now.
Yeah, he's turning 25. Like he's super young. Like I think it's in the Wizards' favor. And I think because of that, like you rock out with him and see what he can become. Just because like we haven't had like we went through Morris last year. Like we had a little bit of a fun year with Russell, but like no one was here when we had like Saturansky and every like random like
Vesely,
bro, we had so many
Petrov.
we had so many random players. We had so like we had the Sadorinsky era with Bradley Beal. Like we had, I was a fan of Neto, but we had like the Neto era. Like bro, like we had like it's nice to have a guard that is above 6'3" and is act and like and then can shoot. It's nice to have like a point guard where you're like, like he may not be the best now, but at least like I could actually see him going somewhere. And I
If
think that's like the biggest thing. Look, the Wizards don't have to be good this year. I think that was a big issue with everyone. We were mediocre for so many years. People want us to be mediocre again. No, guys, this year we're just gonna bottom out. We're just gonna bottom out,
Tank.
and we're gonna actually tank. We're gonna finally go into a full tank and a full rebuild. And this is the reality of it. This is what OKC did. This is what Detroit's doing. This is what the Magic did. Like all the teams that you're starting to see, like the young talent emerge, have gone through it. And now, like, we've finally done it, like, in the X amount of years that we've been just mediocre. We finally are seeing what a full tank is, and it's ugly. It's bad. You have super low lights. You're on ESPN, and you're not the reason why. You're the defense. Like, it's the way it happens. But, like, I think overall, Dawkins and Winger have done a good job. And I just continue to hope that they develop JP into being what I think he could be.
So the one thing that I say with tanking right now is one thing that you mentioned is this is a weaker draft. Do you feel like they could have waited a season, or do you think that this might potentially be a situation where the front office is really going to have to cook here? They're really going to have to put in some work if they want to see some success out of this.
I guess last year, right? We had the pick we had, right? It was a lot of people wanted Cam Whitmore. A lot of people were going for the more, he's a dog. And Dawkins, again, you have to look at Dawkins and Winger. Winger was part of the Clippers rebuild.
Yeah.
And then Dawkins was part of the OKC rebuild. So because of that, they got like they have an eye and they've picked out like diamonds are rough. They went Bilal Coulibaly to a guy who at the time was known for being Wemby's teammate, but was a very project player. And I think when they went rebuild, they're not going like, we're going to rebuild for like a year or two or even 3, where it's like, we're just waiting for. I feel like when rebuilds are really short like that, they're more kind of waiting for like those super teams to disband or get old. But a real rebuild is being really bad for almost half a decade and going young and developing. And they went Bilal Coulibaly, someone who is super young, a lot of upside. You can't teach his defensive like intangibles. He was 6'6" at one point. Now he's 6'8", still growing, super long arms, super athletic. And he shattered expectations at first. He ended off this season not shooting as well, but like a lot of rookies are gonna have like your ups and downs. That's why you're a rookie. But I think like that was a pick where they were very much cooked and they thought, okay, long term he can develop into this. He has a Giannis type of development, what they say, where he shows a lot of potential. His ceiling's really uncapped. You don't know what he could really be. He could be a 3-and-D. He could be a next superstar. You really don't know. But because you won the rebuild, like I think it was better they went with someone like Bilal, who is a very like cornerstone piece, than maybe like a Cam Whitmore, who, don't get me wrong, no hate to him. He's a DMV guy, probably more of a Baltimore close-up area guy. But like regardless, I'm gonna take him as a DMV, play for Team Mello. I don't care. But like he was more of like he's gonna be a dog now. I think you want to develop. And I think with this draft, it's a weaker draft, but I think because a lot of people aren't looking at this draft, they did a good job of picking up picks. Like they're gonna have a top 3 pick this year. They're gonna have a protected late round pick, and they're gonna have a second round pick. And I think that this is a draft where you find like there's no clear cut guy, but there's a lot of guys who can end up being something that's really good, a really good role player or a diamond in the rough. And I think drafts like these are where you get like your guys for the future. Because I think everyone is looking for 2025, 2026 for your Ace Baileys, your Boozer twins, and Cooper Flag. But because so many people are gonna pass on this draft, you can take the hit, you can take the miss and be like, oh, it didn't really land. It really wasn't a strong draft anyway. Like it's a low risk, high reward type situation. Like you just shoot for the stars. Like, and I think that's something that they did a good job with, like looking now. I remember at the beginning, like, oh, people were like, why they tank now? I think this is a draft where the Wizards can have an upper hand and they can continue to develop these project type of players where they're all gonna start hitting their stride at a time. And not everyone's gonna hit their stride. And
Right.
with those, you start to see, okay, move on from him. But these guys are really good, and that when they're all like really good, like 3 or 4 years, at this point, Avi will be like 26, 27. Bilal will be like 23. Whoever gets drafted will be like, they'll be so young and they'll have so much cap space. It's like, all right, well, we could probably start contending. Oh, bet. Let's go get some star now because we have the cap space. Like, I think they looked really long term, and I think that's like what is so hard about rebuilding because I think the pressure is always to win now to have some sort of direction, and especially draft. Like, I think having a rebuild starting off with a draft where like you hit prior with the law and hit another and draft allows them just to not have expectations. But when you start your rebuild with Ace Bailey or Cooper Flag and they're basically like, you are our savior, do something.
Yep.
That's scary. Like, that's why Wembanyama is probably, he has dope potential, but like, he has so much expectations on him that we're not even really seeing how great and generational he is now.
Right.
Sounds like he has to be this, has to take the Spurs to this level. But being a guy like my pick, which I guess was like my second take, was I think Stephen Castle draft. Stephen Castle wasn't even the best player on his March Madness team this year. It was Donovan Clingan. It was probably Cam Spencer, even Newton. But I think he's gonna be like a Shea type of potential where like he's playing a role in college. He's a big guard. He's 6'6". He was a lockdown defender. He played point guard in high school, but in the UConn he played small forward, and he was like their guard your best player and help play make from like a secondary ball handler situation. I think he's one of the guys I'm very high on, and I would like for the Wizards to pick. And I think like if you don't land with him, you have a good tall guard, a guy who can capably defend, which you always need. And if he goes really well, you have yourself one of them guys. Like, I don't know. I think this takes the pressure off of prospects because they know they're gonna suck next year regardless, so they don't have to feel like there's this rise to make the Wizards a better team. They're not going to.
Oh, so like from a player perspective, it's you kind of dream of this type of situation. I can fly under the radar, really develop, and then when it's time for the big contract, I'll actually have a fair shot instead of the pressure of this city needs you. You need to save the city.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, you have like obviously LeBron is a bad example. But you have players where like they've crumbled under expectations. Like we all can sit back and we can name guys who have had all this expectation going in the draft. Like Michael K. Gross was supposed to save Charlotte. Like we could really just go through bust after bust after bust. And I think some of that is just
Gilchrist.
like, bro, there's
gosh.
like we had like even Jan Vesely. Jan Vesely was the third pick in the draft. Jan Vesely and Otto Porter were supposed to save the city. Like we're putting those guys to save the Wizards. Like these guys both were gonna be great role players, but we put them because their draft pick number. We had the expectation that they need to save the city. People said Jan Vesely was going to be Dirk Nowitzki with athleticism. Why would you tell people that? Because then you go there and they're like, dang, like I'm the third pick. I got to be this. Whereas realistically, we're so bad that their pick is not like our pick is going to be a top 3 and they're not going to move the barrel at all. Like, it's like, yeah, bro, like this, we want you to take your time here. We don't want you to feel like you develop. And I think that's a big thing. But when you have the pressure, like you need to save the city. Like, look at Scoot. I think Scoot's a great example of that. Scoot Henderson was like, oh, we lost Damian Lillard. Now you, Scoot, have to basically be what his impact was. And people have forgotten that, point guards and shooting guard, like guards in general haven't had the best rookie years. We've just seen generational good people like Ja and Trey and Luca who are like, and even like De'Aaron, but like who are smashed expectations, but like in the 2000s and even like the early 2010s, like your guards aren't having good first 2 years because that like they have to feel scoring guard or you're a
Yeah.
floor general. They're like, yo, you have to learn how to do this in the NBA under NBA schemes, NBA like play styles, and like all that, like NBA defense and like just NBA like just prowess. Like that's hard. So I
Look at
think,
Lonzo.
yeah, like
Very good example.
I just think that the pressure's off of whoever the Wizards draft. The pressure's off, honestly, whoever gets drafted this year. Like Jimmy Butler was a guy who was like 30th pick. No one knew Jimmy was gonna be as good. No one knew Giannis gonna be as good. Like drafts like those are draft like where like you just get guys and you let them develop. And Jimmy Butler again, his first few years weren't that good, but they just kept letting them develop. Like guys, like drafts that are weak like this is where you get like these random guys in like the late to mid first round, and sometimes like the first few picks will end up being really good. But like I think this is the draft, and I hope the Wizards pick guys that are one of those lucky ones.
Well said. Well said.